Good afternoon. Welcome to Actsafe Injury Prevention Week's presentation of your mental health and entertainment production, taking care of yourself and your peers. I will be your moderator for this session. My name is Natalie Diaz, and I am a safety advisor with Actsafe Safety Association. Motion picture and entertainment production work is unique, stressful, and demanding. And the effects of the pandemic have increased the challenges. This afternoon, our presenters will provide practical ideas, insights, and strategies for you to maintain your own mental health and support that of your peers. Thank you to FSEAP and Call Time Mental Health for organizing this session. Now, let's meet our presenters. Shauna Green is an EAP counselor providing counseling, support, and training for FSEAP client groups. She has supported individuals struggling with problematic substance issues and substance use, and relationship issues, and has worked with a youth and adults in both one-on-one and group settings. Greg Taylor is a registered clinical counselor and a leader in the field of workplace mental health and wellness, specializing in psychological health and safety in the workplace and workplace mental health. Greg has been a subject matter advisor to the Call Time Mental Health campaign since it started, and FSEAP, which also leads, is the Employee Assistant Program provider for IATSE 669 and Tinters 155. Christina Kasperzik is a Vancouver-based camera operator and photographer. She is a proud member of ICG 669, including having served on the 669 Executive Board for 22 years. And she is a strong defender for healthy and safe work environments. Welcome to all.
Hello and welcome everyone. First of all, I just wanted to say a thank you to Actsafe for providing us with this platform today so we can share this segment with you. The opioid crisis, fentanyl crisis in 2016 brought the film sector together. 6 unions and guilds wanted to create a community of care to help those with mental illness and substance abuse issues. To reduce the stigma and increase the awareness to workers, family, and colleagues, a website was created which identifies services and benefits that will help with self-care and help, self-awareness, as well as other tools and resources. It is really important that we all participate in helping create culture where everyone feels safe at work, supported, and empowered. We really need to look out for ourselves and for each other. I'm really looking forward to today's segment, and I'm going to pass it on now to Greg Taylor. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. And of course, I appreciate all the work that you do. And just so everyone knows that the Call Time Mental Health campaign really was a group of union leaders that came together recognizing the crisis and that put in a lot of their own personal time as well as work time, and that the unions have contributed funds voluntarily to this campaign to work together. And so we've been privileged as one of the EAP providers amongst the number that serve all of these union groups. And as was mentioned, we're the particular providers for IATSE 891, actually, and also Teamsters 155, and there's other providers. And what was developed was the website calltimementalhealth.com. So if you want to check out the campaign and some of our resources, you can go to that website, calltimementalhealth.com, now or after the session, and check out the resources. And some of the website contains information directly related to each of the health benefit plans for those unions. But there's also pages and resources that are open to the public. So you don't have to be a member of one of those film unions to be able to benefit from the resources that are listed on that page. So we welcome everybody to visit there. And so really proud and encouraged to be part of today. And so I'll just now introduce Shauna here, and you heard her introduction, but Shauna works on my team at FSEAP within our EAP program. Our agency, along with others, of course, know much about entertainment and film industry just through our work with members from each of the unions that access us for support. And so Shauna will be leading us through some of the presentation. I'll add in some comments here and there as we go. And then after the more kind of teaching part of the presentation, we do have a couple of actual members who are going to share a little bit about their personal testimony, their personal story, just to attach what we're talking about today to real lived lives who are working in entertainment, and what guarding and taking care of their mental health looks like for them. So Shauna, would you like to share your screen, and let's get going?
Absolutely, thank you so much. All right, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, can see it.
Great, thanks. Perfect. So yeah, thank you for the warm introduction, and I'm certainly very honored and grateful to be here today as part of the Actsafe Injury Prevention Week. It's also wonderful to be a part of the Call Time Mental Health Initiative, very meaningful partnership here. So thank you for that. Here's a bit of an overview of what we'll be going through today. So we'll start off with an introduction about mental health. What is mental health, and how prevalent are mental health issues in our population? Then we'll move to taking care of your own mental health as well as supporting your peers. And my real goal for those sections and for this whole presentation really today is to provide some real concrete strategies that you can try and use, you can take away and try them in your own lives. From there, we'll move, as Greg mentioned, to some peer stories. So I'll hand it over to some other speakers, and you can hear their perspectives as well. We'll have Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions, please note them down or add them to the chat. We might jump in for some as we go, but we'll certainly have some time to come back to any questions at the end as well. So yeah, to start off, what is mental health, and why is it something that we're here talking about today? There are lots of ways that we can describe or define mental health. One of those ways is to think of it as a continuum. So this ranges everywhere from healthy down through reacting, being injured, and ill. And each space has its own sort of characteristics. So in that healthy space, you might think of those times when you're feeling stress. Of course, those will always happen in our lives, but you're really able to cope. You kind of can handle it, you can bounce back, you have that sense of resiliency. A little bit further down the continuum, you might be in a space where you're more reactive. So this could be things like you're feeling irritable, or maybe you kind of feel a bit short-tempered. They might be sort of mild reactions where you don't see yourself as necessarily being your best self, but you're still able to kind of come back, process what happened and get back to your normal functioning without too much difficulty. Moving sort of further down the spectrum, you can get into the injured zone. So this is where there's more long-term impairments to your day-to-day living. You start to notice that the stress you're feeling or your levels of distress are really affecting your functioning, and it might be a good time to reach out and talk to somebody for help. And then towards the bottom of that spectrum here, we can get into actual mental illness. So these are things where a clinical diagnosis sort of best describes what you're experiencing. And that is definitely when it's helpful to work with health professionals, and they can really help understand what's going on for you. And so how prevalent or how common, are concerns with mental illness? Well, just some statistics within Canada. In any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experiences a mental illness or addiction problem. That's in any given year. And this one really blows me away even. By the time Canadians reach 40 years of age, 1 in 2, so that's half the population, have had or currently have a mental illness. Really, really commonplace. And looking at work specifically, well, 1 in 6 working Canadians say that their workplace is a frequent or ongoing source of feelings around depression and anxiety or other feelings related to mental illness. And 82% of people with mental health issues indicate that it does impact their work. Yet, over a third of people would not tell their current manager if they are experiencing a mental health problem. So this really speaks to the stigma that's still out there and sort of indicates that people might not necessarily be reaching out for help or looking for support, even when they do need it. Hopefully that makes it clear why the significance of why we're here today, in part.
Yeah, Shauna, I think that's part of this process and the Call Time Mental Health campaign. If you haven't seen it yet, on the Call Time Mental Health website, there's a video, a PSA video, that there's actual members from across film unions actually talking about their own experience. It's very impactful, and part of the campaign is really reducing the stigma. These stats aren't to scare people, but just to say that we all at some point, and when you see that half of people by the time you're 40 have had some kind of mental health issue to address, it just means that, when we all face extreme stresses in our life, and it may be from work, it may be from personal, it may be from the current COVID crisis, but that we face mental health stressors, and some of which overwhelm us at times. And so we want to normalize it, to say in the arts and entertainment and film sector that you're under a lot of pressure, and lately having challenges without work because of productions being shut down, that we just all acknowledge that everyone's under a lot of pressure of various types, not to mention going back to work sites now. And so, just wanted to interject there just to say this is all meant to really just help everyone acknowledge that it's okay to acknowledge that we can end up under pressure and have challenges with mental health at any time during our life.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. And that's a great segue into this next section, where we'll kick it off by actually looking a little bit more about what's unique about the motion picture and entertainment industry in particular. So here are a couple of graphs that are from a study in 2015 where people in the BC film industry were interviewed regarding their work conditions. And the text is a little bit small to read here, but this chart on the left is showing on average how many hours people reported working each day when they're working on a production. And as you can see, the vast majority of people were working at least 11 hours, many more than 14 hours a day. So very few people in that sort of 9 to 5 kind of classic expression for work. That's just not the reality in this industry. And extending that to a week, it's one thing to kind of pull an all-nighter once in a while, but even looking at this the span of a week, people are reporting, most people reporting working 50 to 60 or more than 60 hours. So really a lot of time were spent working while on a production. And again, just to kind of see how this might last, how this might impact people's lives, when people were asked what's the typical duration of your employment, over 40% of people said that it was at least 2 months, with a significant number reporting more than 4 months. So It's not something that you kind of just like hunker down and push through for a couple of weeks even. This is like, you know, a really significant part of time, which certainly, you know, brings into question the sustainability. And so this I wanted to share, it's another view of another way, like lens we can look through to understand our mental health. And that is sort of this lens of balance, and how is your overall wellness being affected. So we can think of different areas of our wellness, like physical wellness, social wellness, spiritual, emotional, intellectual, financial. Other people include, there's things like environmental, or of course your career wellness, those kind of things as well. But ultimately, you know, it's kind of a question for you, or something you can reflect on, is how is your time at work affecting these different areas of your life? And that's going to be different for every individual. So just as an example here, you might notice, or a person might notice, for example, that while working on a production, they get a lot less sleep with all those late nights and, you know, unpredictable schedules. You might have less time to meal plan or cook meals at home, maybe less time to go to the gym as well. Looking at something like your social sector, the social component of wellness, maybe it's a perk for you that you get to spend more time with your coworkers if you enjoy spending time with your coworkers, but maybe there's a trade-off that you're spending less time with your other friends and family members. So again, this will look different for everyone, but a piece of wellness here is just taking that consideration, you know, am I getting out of balance in one, two, or several areas of my life? And this is something that we'll come back to later. Of course, now, as Greg mentioned as well, we have the extra challenge, of course, of a global pandemic. So, I mean, all sorts of questions are coming up for people, like, am I safe? Is my family safe? What's it gonna be like to go back to work? And is that even safe? What's gonna happen if I get sick? What should I do? What about if I get others sick? I mean, these are all legitimate questions, and the amount of uncertainty that COVID has caused has definitely affected people's, overall stress and anxiety levels. So coming back to this mental health continuum model, this is sort of a different view of it, but certainly, what we're seeing is a lot of people are kind of shifting a little bit towards the right in this view. So there's more potential for things like feeling irritable, stressed out, like nervous, having more attention. Definitely a lot of people having decreased social activities. That's even part of the recommendations, is to kind of reduce your in-person socializing right now. So certainly, people are finding they might be shifting along this spectrum. And again, we'll revisit this in a moment. This kind of just sets the context for where we're going, though, of course, which is, with this stress that already comes from a demanding industry, and then the additional stress and anxiety of COVID-19, what are we going to do about it? How can we manage this? And of course, there are lots of different strategies that we can apply to try and start feeling more calm and more grounded during these times. That's what we'll dive into now. So coming back to this, this continuum model, I think one of the first things that anyone can do is just try to raise your own awareness. So looking at this type of spectrum, looking at the different characteristics in each area, where do you think you fall on it? Some people are actually finding that the change, like being home for an extended period, they got to spend more time with their family. They, got to sort of take a break from work stresses. Some people might find they're in that healthy range right now. Other people may find that they are noticing differences in their sleep, or some of that irritability that we mentioned. So just, you know, you can take a moment to try and figure out, where might I be? Because depending on where you are on this type of spectrum, there's different strategies that might be most relevant to you. If you are in that sort of healthy zone, it might be, you know, good to just kind of keep up what you're doing. So take some time to recognize what is working for me right now, as well as consider some plans for what can I do to get back to this place when I do sort of drift and maybe don't feel as well as I do right now. If you're more towards the lower end of the healthy range or in the reacting phase, it could be a really good time to focus on your self-care, use some of those skills around like emotional regulation and stress management, and really focus on connection, which could be to your peers, to your family members, to a therapist. All those kind of tools are really great for this sort of stage. And if you're further down the spectrum, it's definitely a time to consider, you know, seeking professional help with more, you know, significant issues, and help is definitely out there. So we'll be focusing today largely on this piece. Some things, like I said earlier, that hopefully you can take away, you can practice on your own after this presentation and after the end of the week. And just before we dive into the strategies, I did want to highlight, while I emphasize sort of in that maybe injured or in the illness part of the spectrum, it's definitely a good idea to look for help. It's appropriate to reach out for help at any stage. If there was actually one message that I hope everybody took from this presentation, it would actually be this. So even if you're feeling really healthy, you can reach out and ask, you know, how can I keep this going? What does it look like for me to plan to get back here when I am struggling? Or maybe you want to reach out for help so that you can know how to support one of your peers or a family member who's not doing so well. No matter where you are on the spectrum or on the continuum of mental health, there's always somebody out there who's willing and wants to help you. And, you know, there's a ton of resources that are out there, and we're certainly here today to speak to those and to help just carry that message. So kind of getting into some of these strategies that you can use when you are sort of working on your own mental health and looking at your own sort of anxiety and stress management. One of them, I wanted to come back to this idea of balance. So just again, that concept of awareness and considering these different aspects of your own personal wellness. If you sort of tease out how you're feeling about each sector or how many activities you're kind of investing in each area of self-care, it might not look like this, but for you might be able to just pick out like one or two areas that you really have a sense kind of are lacking in your life right now. And that's a great place to start. You know, if you are feeling pretty exhausted or like you don't have a lot of spare time, it's quite overwhelming to think like, oh, you know, I have to like work on my whole self. I have to take care of my emotional self, intellectual self, financial self. But what you can do is just kind of focus on one or two areas, and that can help you prioritize in those times when you do have a bit of extra energy or time. It might be good, you know, time to just be like, you know, it's okay. I can let other things go. I'm gonna take a nap right now, or I'm gonna get out there. I'm gonna get a bit of exercise, and then by slowly just doing small activities in one area over time, you can see that it can begin to balance out. And I like to follow that up with talking about self-soothing, because I know there have definitely been times in my life where I'm like, I don't even have time to like, you know, do anything that sounds like self-care. And self-soothing, I find, is sort of kind of the lesser talked about piece of self-care. Self-care can, of course, encompass things like, personal hygiene, like fitness. It's a lot of those components that we just saw on the wheel, and can often require, energy and time to invest in those areas, and of course, extremely important. But when you're feeling like you're more in survival mode and you're really trying to kind of get through the days, but you want to take care of yourself, you can turn to self-soothing. And to me, I think of this as treating your senses. So it's like enjoying a delicious meal, or, thinking about like what delicious food smells like, or having those like, nice soaps or candles. This is why I think a lot of people always use the bubble bath as like it's a canonical example of self-care. It's because it is soothing. It's you're in that situation where it's warm, you might have nice lighting, you'll have like fragranted bubble bath oils or that kind of thing. So it's really about soothing yourself. Listening to good music that you enjoy is another example of this. So this is a way that you can actually calm your nervous system, feel that you're safe and comfortable, and lower your stress with just feeling good, without necessarily needing to devote a lot of time or energy when you kind of feel like you're tapped out. And the one piece that I like to add to this as well is definitely it's good to be aware of what you are using for your self-soothing behaviors. There's definitely a lot of people, I think, turn to eating junk food, or they might turn to substances as a way to self-soothe, because it is kind of bringing that sense of relaxation and comfort. But of course, there's a risk of using that over time, that it can become a problematic issue. So definitely using things that have less risk, that repeated use over time will have negative consequences, is a piece to keep in mind.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in for a second, I think all of us are in that kind of state where, I think it's like you said, it's interrupting our stress response, right? Because I think all of us, even if we've not been working, hearing the news and election news in the US, election news now here in BC, COVID information coming at us every day. I find myself, having my own work stresses and life stresses. And then when I go to interrupt that, I end up using my apps or, to look at the news. And it's almost like I get distracted by trying to see what the next bad piece of news is, and I realize I don't give my nervous system a rest. And so I think the key to this is that doesn't have to mean an hour at the gym or something very specific, but it could be little tricks, and I know you're going to be talking about that too, that we can use just to give ourselves an interrupted amount of time. And so I have an app on my phone that has 10-minute meditations that I can fit in, even if it's just between phone calls or Zoom meetings or whatever I might be doing. And it's just enough to kind of untrigger my stress response, allow my brain to settle for a minute so I can kind of think straight, and then I can get back to my day. So just thought I'd jump in, because I think all of us, including I know many within the arts and entertainment, for all of the different reasons we've just talked about, are well triggered into the stress response, whether it be financial or other. And how do we can't solve all of the problem all at once, or even solve some of the stresses that we end up facing, but we can manage how much we're triggered through a day in that stress response.
It's great. Thank you, Greg. Yeah, very well said. And I think something that came up for me when you were speaking there too is, again, just to remind you, this is really going to be, it's very individual. It's very different for everybody. So, a meditation app might work for you, or having a nice meal might work for others, or, even this whole strategy. I think it's really important. You could also be right now in a time where you're getting overwhelmed with like recommendations, like, oh, you should do this. There's all these different things you can do. Definitely want to reiterate here that you can just step back and see what resonates, what feels like it could be a fit for you or not. If it does, then keep a note of it and try it out. If it doesn't, that's totally okay. Let it go, and something else will come your way at the right time and when it feels right. So on that note, we'll move on to another strategy. So this is another one that we can use, as Greg was saying, to really kind of give our nervous system a break or change how it's responding. This is called paced breathing. I've also heard it called strategic breathing, but ultimately it's a strategy for focusing on and changing the pattern of our breath. You might have used breathing techniques like this for things like performance anxiety as well. But a simple way that you could get started with something like this is just to count as you breathe. So you could inhale to a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale to a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And even as I was just doing that now, it will be different for different people, of course, but that might have sounded like quite a long inhale and exhale if you had to count like that. But this is actually quite common, is that when we're in states of stress throughout our lives, we actually are in a fight or flight type of mode. And that's when our breathing tends to be shallow and faster. So by practicing this sort of paced breathing, you can actually change your baseline stress level over time. So I really like this strategy because it's one that you can both use in the moment. If you feel stressed, you can do that counting. You can give your nervous system feedback that, this isn't a crisis and that you can find a place of calm. But you can also use this at any time. And if you regularly practice just paced breathing, so slow, regular breathing, you'll actually change your baseline level of stress over time. And then the last strategy that I'll share today is what's called mindfulness of current emotions. So if anybody is familiar with mindfulness or meditation practices, this might, overlap with some of what you've learned before. Mindfulness overall is paying intentional attention to the present moment and without judgment. So mindfulness of current emotions is when we apply that practice, but to the sensations in our body in particular. So it's really a skill, and it is something that we can practice and build up our skill in over time of noticing and observing and accepting your emotions without judgment. Marsha Linehan is one person who incorporates this work into her therapeutic program, so you could look that up more if you are interested in more detail. But in its simplest form, the intention of this practice or this skill is to basically not run away from or try and suppress or distract yourself from your emotions. There are times, short periods of time, where that's a good thing to do. But when we're talking about like long-term stress or long-term skill development around emotional regulation, then we really want to be processing our emotions. And one way to do that is to pay attention to those sensations in your body when you are feeling something. So for example, you might have a sense like that you're angry. What does that feel like in your body? Maybe you can feel there's a clenched sensation or tension in your stomach, in your abdomen muscles, or maybe your fists, maybe you're making fists or your fists are feeling clenched. Maybe your face feels warm because it's there's a lot of blood flowing to it. There's a lot of, you have a flushed face. These are things that this practice would include just noticing those sensations and just paying attention to them, not judging them, not trying to change them. one thing you can do is add like your own visualizations or metaphors to this. So for example, coming back to the anger example, if you notice that your hands were clenched and you're paying attention to that feeling, you might imagine, you know, releasing that stress maybe as you open up your hands and you can visualize letting that energy sort of flow out of your fingertips and into, you know, the ground, just as a way you're almost like grounding yourself through that visualization. And the reason that that's particularly helpful or effective is because emotions are really meant to flow through us. It's when they get stuck, and they can get stuck in our bodies, that they come back at, you know, inopportune times, or they start to build up so that we have those reactive patterns. So really, this technique is most effective at noticing you're experiencing an emotion, paying attention to it, and then trying to just focus on it as a way to process it and let it flow through you. So hopefully that gives you some strategies that you can use to take care of your own mental health. And now we'll shift gears and talk about supporting your peers.
Great, and just to jump in at the end of that last session, we'll be doing Q&A at the end, but there was just a question about, you know, how much support we need from family or workplaces to actually help us engage in self-soothing. And I just thought that was a good moment to just say that really this is something that we can do for ourselves, that if we have support from employers that allow us some space to do these things, or family that are willing to kind of either help with our soothing practices or participate with a partner or a child in some breathing exercises, and or even just giving you a few moments alone, not bothering you while you take a moment to breathe or meditate or use one of these techniques. I think the good thing is that these are things that you can do in a short enough period that you don't really need like time off work or a large break. It can be inserted between conversations, between calls, between call times, and or on your way back between work and home. These are things that you can insert in there as well, just on your own.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great question and excellent follow-up to it, Greg. And it made me think, I mean, this can totally range in sort of what it looks like, because certainly, you know, it's something where if you can get other people around you on board, that could absolutely support what you're trying to do here. And you know, it could be a way that other people can benefit as well. For example, you know, if there's some room or some space in your work environment that is kind of particularly set up for people to kind of go and have their own time out or their own pause, that could help lots of people. And it could be, you know, that space where I can imagine, you know, some like plants or some ability to play some soothing music, even some simple things, but to take that sort of mental pause and be able to have some of that soothing, treating your senses like we mentioned, and then come back could be beneficial to lots of people if that was in like a workplace. But then if something like that just doesn't seem feasible or possible, there you can go all the way down to just simple things. Like I know some people do things like they'll carry like a smooth stone in their pocket, so that if they're just feeling stressed or they notice they're starting to get kind of activated in a situation, they can reach in and just kind of feel the smoothness of the stone as a moment of soothing and almost like a way to ground themselves. So it can really, it can look like so many different things. So speaking about how we can support others, this is an image I saw in one of my social media feeds recently. So it was created by a woman who lives with chronic illness, and she posted sort of this blank canvas with the words about "you don't look sick," and she asked people with chronic health issues to fill in the canvas with the things that are going on for you that other people never see. And I thought it was actually very fitting for mental health as well, where, you know, people might be in your life, like they could be your friends or they could be co-workers that are showing up, and there's all this stuff going on. They have so many things going on in their lives, and they could have a whole range of internal struggles that you might not be at all aware of. Like, you might not be aware that someone is experiencing depression. Maybe they've been facing discrimination and they don't know how to talk about it with anybody, and it's been really affecting them for, you know, months or even years sometimes. Things like insomnia, things like suicidal ideation. These are things can be very internal experiences that you might not be aware of course, just by looking at someone. And another way to think of this is with an iceberg model. So I myself am from Newfoundland on the East Coast, so I grew up with icebergs, and I always appreciate these iceberg sort of analogies. But basically, what this is showing is that, you know, there's a set of things that you can see, and we'll be talking about these in more detail. There are things like physical changes, the actions that people are taking, what they share about their thoughts or cognitions, as well as their emotions. And then there's a whole depth of things that might be causing them troubles that you're just not aware of. Maybe they had a recent breakup. Maybe they haven't been sleeping well. You know, maybe they're having a lot of conflict with their boss, or maybe they've lost their job and their financial situation is really in trouble. A whole bunch of things that you might just not be aware of. So we'll talk about, you know, the parts that you can possibly see and what that might look like, of course, so that hopefully if you recognize them, you might be able to help. So the first thing to note is that, you know, changes from normal behavior, and I would say normal here means what is typical for an individual. It may vary. So changes from normal behavior may vary across different people, or it might even look different at different times in a person's life. It may be a cause of concern, or it may not be, but it's something to just be aware of. They tend to be seen over an extended period of time. So we're not necessarily talking about somebody just having a bad day, as we all do, of course, but when you're having more bad days than not for an extended period, then it could be a sign of trouble. And these categories are the ones I just mentioned here. So physical changes, actions, cognitions, emotions. A way you can remember this is with that acronym PACE. So are you noticing a change in pace of one of your colleagues or loved ones? So we'll talk about these just briefly. I just wanted to give you a sense of what these can involve, so that you kind of know what you might be looking for, what you just might notice sometime. So physical changes could be changes in personal appearance. Maybe somebody's starting to look exhausted, you know, dark circles under their eyes. Could be deterioration in hygiene. You might notice they're shaky or sweaty, so they seem like physically maybe they're stressed or nervous more often than you remember in the past. And the A is for actions. So there's a whole list of things you might notice. So somebody might start being late to work when that's sort of not typical for them. They might be calling in sick quite often. You might notice that they're making more mistakes than usual. Perhaps they're talking about using substances more than you remember in the past, or maybe they're even showing up to work intoxicated. You might notice they're having interpersonal difficulties, like conflicts with their coworkers more often. So different actions are something you can look for as well. The C is for cognitions. So this is really, what are you noticing, or what are people revealing about their thinking, or what's going on cognitively. So you might notice somebody is having difficulty concentrating. They don't seem to be staying as focused as usual. Perhaps they have, oops, sorry, well, just skipped ahead, sorry. That's okay, I can just speak to that slide. So the cognition, so yeah, they might just have difficulty focusing. They might be speaking even about, you know, talking about harming themselves. They might not just be as present as usual. So it's all these types of signs that there's might be something going on. They might even be speaking about things like hallucinations, which are when people are seeing things that don't seem to be there, or hearing things that don't correspond to reality, or they might have delusions, so different types of thoughts that don't also seem to be reflective of reality as well. So these are things you might notice. And the last one, the E, is for emotions. So in this case, people might become more upset than usual or get frustrated. You might notice they're having a lot of highs and lows, or are extra defensive when criticized. People might be seen crying or seeming really sad or angry at work. These are all indicators that, again, if it's, you know, unusual for them and over an extended period of time, it might be a sign that they could use some support. And of course, you know, biggest question of all, then, if you do notice these signs, how can I help? The first reminder that I think is important here is, I like to think of that safety announcement that they give on every time you go on an airplane. So they're always talking about what to do in case of an emergency, and those oxygen masks drop down. And I always find it quite striking. There's often an image of a parent with their child, and they always say, you should secure your own mask before you help others. And that's even in the case of a parent securing their own mask before they help their child. And that really, you know, obviously it's that in certain cases would be a huge feat to actually say, you know what, I have to take care of myself first before I can help a dear, dear loved one. But of course, that's critical to do, because you could be, of course, risking your own well-being if you care for someone first. But most importantly, you can't really help others effectively, or certainly not for extended periods of time, if you haven't taken care of yourself first. So before you really want to help somebody, and this applies certainly in the workplace or with your friends or loved ones during the pandemic right now, check in with yourself first. Is this a good time for you to have a conversation with somebody? You know, if you yourself are feeling distracted or you're rushed, it might not be a good time to open a conversation with somebody, because you don't really know where it's going to lead. Also, like, are you yourself feeling calm enough, well enough, strong enough? So are you in that place of stability and safety so that you can support somebody else? If you are, then that's great. It might be a good time to help. If not, it's okay to wait and recognize that and keep focusing on yourself until you're ready to focus on somebody else. Also, just a note, you know, to be prepared, because you don't know what you're gonna get. If you think that somebody might be in need of support, they might be open to talking to you, or they just might not be in a place where they're ready for that kind of conversation or to accept that sort of support right now. And frankly, that's okay. You can, you know, as long as you're acting in accordance with your own values, if you're gentle and you have an easy manner when you approach this, you can maintain your own self-respect. And especially if you just are respecting the other person, might be willing or unwilling to have your support right now.
I'd like to just jump in for a moment. I think it's also important when you self-assess and you feel you're not ready to have that conversation, to at least direct your concern about your peer to somebody else who might be ready to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great tip. And, you know, that could be a supervisor, it could be another peer, but absolutely, if you're noticing this and you just know that you're not in a place for it, there still could be somebody else who is ready to take that on. That's a really great point. And so what can this look like? We'll go through some steps here about, you know, how you might actually approach having a conversation with someone if you want to lend a hand. So first of all, just as you were checking in with yourself to see if it was a good time, you also want to check in with another person to see if it's a good time to speak with them and if they're willing to have that conversation. You know, they also, maybe they really need to use the washroom, or maybe they're late for an appointment, or maybe, you know, they've just had a very stressful day already. So you don't want to just kind of surprise somebody by opening up a conversation that might, you know, become emotional for them. So it's always nice. I kind of summarize that by saying, like, make an appointment, you know, try and like book their time, ask if this is an okay time. If not, you know, when might be a good time for you to chat. Second, if it is a good time and you do have the conversation, it's nice to stick to the facts of what you've noticed. So there's even a difference between saying something like, you know, you've just seemed out of sorts lately, versus saying something like, you know, I've noticed that you've been late to our meetings and that you're not hanging out with us for lunch anymore. If you kind of come to the facts, then there's less insinuation or less room to even argue with what's been going on. It might make the person just feel less defensive if you stick with the facts. And of course, you can always share your concern. That's true for you. So it's always okay to say, you know, I've noticed this and I'm worried about you, or I'm concerned about you. Then if that leads to a conversation and they open up, it's a great time to stay curious. So, you know, just try to imagine where they might be coming from. It's not the time to judge, you know, what their situation is like or how they've been handling it. Just keep an open mind and mostly just listen with genuine curiosity and empathy. And number 4 would be to ask. This is the time we can ask what do they need and how you might be able to help. It's always good to remind them or make them feel confident that you'll respect their confidentiality. This isn't about, you know, gossip or about, you know, telling people if they're not ready for that. It's really important to try and create that sort of confidential space. And then last, you can suggest counseling support if it seems like that's something that might land with them, and, you know, share an appropriate resource such as their employee and family assistance program number. If that's something where they seem interested but they'd be, you know, reluctant to call on their own, then you can certainly make the call together. And the important thing here is, you know, just as you're supporting your peer, so that they're not alone, you're also not alone too. You're more than welcome to call your EFAP and, you know, ask for how you might go about this, or ask for support for you as you're trying to support a coworker. And just to conclude here, in case, you know, a week or 2 or more go by and you do notice those changes in pace and you're thinking like, how can I support this person, and you sort of forget all the details of what we've talked about here, a quick way to remember this is just the 3 words: ask, listen, help. So start up by asking, you know, is this an okay time? Ask what's going on for the person. Listen to what they have to say. Be kind, be genuine, and then help, offer some help, offer a phone number or a resource, and try to support them that way.
Yeah, and just to jump in on this note, there was actually a question that came in, and again, we'll do some at the end, but it was just somebody mentioning that they struggle with mental illness themselves and worry about asking a peer about theirs might trigger their own. And if we have any tips on how to best ask them if they're okay. And I think this question came in before you kind of went through this slide, the last couple slides. So I think we've addressed a bit about it, but I think it's really important to reemphasize that this is all meant to be very natural, right? This isn't learning counseling skills. This is just being a friend and noticing how people are doing, and in that moment. And if you're feeling strengthened enough, again, being able to say something, I think it was already mentioned, and Christina fed back at just and participated a bit in saying, you know, and also maybe just mention it to somebody else who might be able to be a support. And also know it's kind of like the iceberg, right? The secret is that there's a lot of the iceberg below the water. So it's okay to keep it just at the tip and be able to say to somebody, hey, it didn't seem quite yourself today. I know I'm under a lot of stress and have my own things that I need help with, and I'm just wondering how you're doing. So your sharing is just saying, I have my own things, right? You don't have to go into what they are, and you don't also have to probe the other person for what their things are, but just an acknowledgement of, hey, how are you doing? And if you're struggling, can we figure out some resources that we can access together or that you can access? And so I think it's just taking the pressure off that you need to be the solution to whatever's happening. And that really, when we're thinking about peer support, it's just noticing and acknowledging, like you said, and ask, listen, and help. And the help can just be, hey, did you remember we have access to this help? Or did you know about the calltimementalhealth.com website that you can go to? Because I found some good resources there. You know, it can be just that level of help that's just enough for somebody to go, well, somebody cares. It helps them acknowledge their own self, because they may not have realized quite how triggered or depleted they've become themselves, and may just trigger that thought, oh yeah, I really should look into this, or I should get some help.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that question and for those comments, Greg. I think you summarized that really nicely. And this here is one of those numbers that you can give out. So yeah, Family Services EAP is the EAP for people with IATSE and Teamsters. We also do have other resources, community resources that we can share, I believe, to participants after the talk.
Yes,
well.
And so I think that the moderator will probably wrap up with some announcements about that, but the recording of this and some of our slides and resources will be posted to the Actsafe website afterwards, and also will end up on the Call Time Mental Health website as well. And again, FSEAP is the EAP for IATSE 891 and Teamsters 155. If you are in a film union, the calltimementalhealth.com website lists the other plans and providers for the other unions. And somebody here mentioned also that they don't have a union or a plan or an EAP in the same way. And so if you do, you will find resources on the Actsafe site from this week's presentations that do list other free resources. If you also Google COVID mental health BC and just Google that, the government has a website set up with resources that they've been funding in the community for sliding scale and or funded counseling, the Mental Health Commission of Canada, but also the mental health groups in BC do also have some public resources as well. So that's a good place to start. And of course, Call Time Mental Health has links to other resources on the website there as well. And so this is our chance to transition to the next part. We'll get back to some more questions, but we had a couple people from the industry who were willing to share a little bit about their personal story. And so we have Richard and Andrea. And so Richard, I'm not sure if you're there and ready, but we had him lined up and we're chatting with him before the session. So we're just going to check in with him because he was actually working on set, but was able to join in with us and be able to share a bit about his story. So Richard, welcome.
Hi, Greg. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to be a part of this. Yeah, I was just working, but kind of worked through my lunch so I could take a break for this and yeah, tell you a little bit about my story. So I am a grip in 891. I've been in film for since 2015, and I feel this is where I belong. I love being in film. I do feel like this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been going through all those other jobs for, is this. But it does come with its complications, and you know, the hours that we work, and you know, you have to sacrifice some things. I don't see my friends as much as I'd like to, and relationships are tricky. I've recently started seeing someone, and so, you know, she understands that it's crazy hours and that, but she said she'll want to work around it so that she can see me. And you know, that's a tough thing to find, because most people would just say screw it, it's not worth the trouble. um, I battled I battled with my depression for years, years before sobering up. I never knew what was wrong with me, and it just, I always felt out of place. I felt like a burden to everybody, and I felt like I didn't belong, even in my own family, which led me down my path of addiction. And as you know, we know, mental health and addiction, they go hand in hand. And you know, a lot of things can come into play. You know, they can talk about your gateway drugs or whatever they are, but just in my opinion, I believe that it's trauma that is a gateway for a lot of people. I know it was for me anyway, and it led me down a pretty dark path. My addiction and my depression just feeding off of each other. Um, and when I had a chance to sober up and change my life, I took it with everything that I had, because I knew that I didn't want to go back to what I was. Now that being said, you just don't vanquish your depression. You can get an upper hand on it, but there's things that you need to be doing in order to stay ahead of it, because it doesn't disappear. It's come back, trying to rear its ugly head, and numerous times throughout my sobriety. And even recently, I did pretty well when this pandemic hit. I've been avoiding people for years, so this is nothing new. But I did pretty good. I do a lot of service with my recovery, and I was helping out a lot. So I was doing everything that I had done all along, and everything seemed to be fine. And then I hit a wall, and it was 2 days before my sobriety anniversary. I hit a wall, and I hit it hard, and I didn't know what to do. Even though I'd always been equipped with the tools to help me through it, I didn't know what to do this time, except call for help. And I made the call that night, and I called this number. And yeah, that was a low point for me. But I realized that all my preaching to other people about asking for help not being a weakness, but being a strength, I had to take my own advice. Oh, look, the sun's coming out just for my share. Nice. And I realized that I had to ask for help, and I asked for help, and there was somebody there right away. The lady on the other end of the line, I forget her name. I should have remembered it, but I'm bad with that. She talked to me for about an hour that night, and it was just long enough until my sister and my niece showed up unannounced, because they knew I wouldn't have invited them over, and came to sit with me. And then the next day, I put a plan into place on what I was going to do. And starting the Monday, a counselor got back to me, and I've been speaking to that counselor. We spoke for the first 2 months. We spoke once a week, and now we're going to keep it at every 2 weeks for the next few months if we can. And he's very accommodating with my schedule. He knows that weekends are good for me. So a Sunday afternoon is when I can connect with this gentleman, and I have a good connection with him. I feel safe talking to him, and I tell him about what's going on with me, and he gives me some ideas, and he really helps explain things to me He simplifies things for me because otherwise I will complicate them. And so I believe that talking to somebody, a counselor, a therapist, whatever it may be, is very important for anyone. Nobody is above it. I just believe that if we hold things in for too long, it has a tendency to take its toll on us more than any physical stress could. And it will have all the same effects of what a physical injury can have. You know, I love that picture that you put up where it says you don't look sick. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Nobody can see depression. You know, somebody asked me yesterday, what's the face of depression? And I pulled down my mask and smiled for them. That's it right there. You know, but this same gentleman that asked me about that, since I told him that this is what I'm doing today, he came and told me that he's been wanting to talk to a therapist for a while. He's wanted to make an appointment. I said, okay, then make that appointment. And in the meantime, until you get that appointment, come talk to me. We have to normalize asking for help being okay, not being afraid of, you know, like we talked about, it seems so long ago, back in February, I think it was, smashing the stigma, right? Why are we so afraid to talk to people about how we're feeling? I don't know anymore. I talk to everybody. I probably give too much information, but I'd rather them know than not know. And then they know that they can come and talk to me. So I don't know if I went over in my time, but thank you from the bottom of my heart, all of you, for having me involved with this. It's something that means a lot to me. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. No, that was just perfect. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and courage and your willingness to be able to speak up so that you can be a support to other people. And even just being vulnerable in your own challenges, I mean, that's the reality. I mean, I think many of us, even those of us in helping professions, I mean, we've hit our own walls of various kinds during this time as well. And it's easy to want to try and look the strong man or the strong woman, the part of that, because we're supposed to, because of our title or whatever we're doing. But we all need to reach out for help and just admit our own frailty and our humanness. And I thank you for being part of this call today. And I think just in all the words that you shared was a great message for everyone listening. So thank you. And so we also have Andrea available. And so Andrea, I'll just click the ask to unmute button. I'm not sure if you're ready and available, but I'll just...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if you've had a chance to hear all of the session, but Richard was just sharing about his experience, and we just had a few minutes to see if you could share a little bit about yourself as well.
Yes, definitely. Do you want me to unblock the video?
It's your choice, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yes, you can, if you can help me with it. Hold on. Start my video. Hi. Yes, I was able to log in I think 20 minutes ago. So thank you so much for having me. And I've heard both of you speak, and thank you, Richard. I don't know if he's still there. That was a really great share. Yeah, I'm glad to be here because I think it's really important that we are speaking up and, you know, breaking the stigma there still is about mental health. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I am predominantly an actor, a UBCP actor in the industry, and have been for, I think, almost 20 years on and off. And all this time, almost all of it, I've been struggling with addiction. I've been now clean almost 4 years again, and that's my third kind of trying to get clean. So I've been through 2 rehabs in between. But how it all really started, before I was only acting, I was also working behind camera as a stand-in, so part of the camera lighting crew. And so I was part of the crew. And I love film, just like Richard and just like all of us. I love being on set. I love everyone involved. It's such a beautiful family environment, and it's amazing to see how the story comes together. But there is also the downside to this, and that's usually the pressure. First, there's the competition, and then there's the pressure because it costs a lot of money every day to make a movie or a television show. So there's, it's always a time crunch. It's very long hours. Oftentimes it's shooting throughout the night, in the rain, outdoors, indoors, lots of people, lots of different personalities, and not everyone is happy and and calm and peaceful every day. So you're dealing with 60, 70, 80, sometimes 30 people on set, all of you together, and there's still a little bit of hierarchy. So it's not that it's fear based, but there is also fear on set. For example, the greener or the younger people being on set are being supervised by the ones who've been working longer, and you can feel the different personalities and just how everyone treats each other. So I wanted to be part of the group and everyone, and I was really good at hiding what was going on in my life. And people would ask if everything's okay, and I, just like Richard said, I would always have the smile on my face and this demeanor that seemed that everything was okay, but inside I was completely crumbling, and my personal life outside of set was a complete disaster. So there was a point where some of the people, you always get close to some people on set, and I started sharing. When I was younger, it was a little bit more difficult, but I started sharing with people, and and there was a time where I had to take a break. It came because I reached a complete rock bottom in my private life, and I actually had to take a break. And I was always afraid that if I take time for my own health and to take care of my well-being, I will never get a chance to go back to the industry, and I would be judged, and I would be perceived as weaker, or just somebody that's being difficult, and somebody who's not reliable to be on set. Because I would call a sick day, and for me, I took a 2-year break in between, and that was a huge break where I actually moved away from Vancouver, and I was getting better. And then when I came back, I came stronger, and I started speaking gradually about my experience and what it's like, and about going through rehab, being part of AA and NA meetings, and having a therapist. And I was working through my stuff while I was creating, because I also write. It wasn't always easily accepted right away. Some people would, maybe laugh at it, but I just kind of kept with it. And I had one more fall that kind of took me out for a while. And then 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I came back really strong, and I said to everyone openly, and I said, this is not okay. We have to stop pretending. I can see and I can name or point the people who are not well. And I just think that right now I'm telling you, I'm not okay. I'm having a bad day. I'm having a really difficult day, and I want to admit it. And I'm sorry, I'm just getting emotional because it's just, it comes back. And I also deal with PTSD. So it's a lot of things to deal with. And I said, we're such a beautiful family. And I think instead of pretending that we're all okay, we should just hold each other and support each other. And if somebody is not well, we should at least someone be able to listen. So I started offering my ear. I said, hey, I can see that something's going on. Hey, I'm here if you want to talk. Here's my number. If you just text me on your break if you don't want to talk, but I'll listen to you. And if you want to take a walk or something at lunch, I'm here. No pressure, but just, I just want you to know that I see you, and feel free to reach out. And I would kind of follow up with the people. And then I've had the same, I've had people to come to me like, hey, what's going on? And I think that in the past years, I've seen improvement, and we have a lot more resources available. And I would like to reiterate that it's absolutely okay to use therapists, counselors, or a friend and share. I know it's cathartic, and sometimes people are afraid that it's going to rehash their experiences, or for the person listening, but I think it's part of the support. And I think that if we're all in the know, we can pretend a lot of possible tragedies happening, because we've seen a lot of sad events happen in our industry. We've lost a lot of people in the last few years, not only to addiction, but suicide, right? Didn't always have to do with addiction, it was depression. And there are things that you can do also for yourself. Like, for example, I'm in pre-production right now producing a feature film, and it's madness. Like, we're going to camera on October 15th, and the hours, even though we're not always in production office, like I'm at home right now, but we have deadlines today, and it's, the hours are like, I don't know, 16 hours a day, like every day. So there's kind of non-stopping, and it's just like things are just raining on. But, you know, this morning I said, I got up earlier, I went outside, I left my phone at home, took my dog out. If you don't have a dog, I recommend going outside and breathing the fresh air, and just take time to kind of breathe and just like touch yourself, just like be aware of all the parts that you have, just kind of be present. Sometimes when I feel like I start having like a panic attack, because sometimes when I feel overwhelmed, I start having, you know, tingly hands, like blurred vision, heart's racing, difficulty breathing. I usually start looking at around me, and I kind of identify like how many green things are around me, for example, and I identify the things around me, how many, you know, how many birds, or how many, I just identify things, and I just make sure. And I know how to do tapping, but I've learned all of this from my therapist. I've been working with her through family services for years, and then I have another one now. And on our UBCP website, the Call Time Mental Health, we have a ton of available resources. Almost all of us have benefits that we can access, and they do cover therapists, psychologists, and there are just things that you can learn, and you can literally do them even when you're on set. You take a minute, you go to the bathroom, and you do these little tapping, you know, you talk to yourself a little bit, you take, you know, a little bit of water. It's really important to hydrate. And if you're not feeling well, it's completely okay to go to, whether it's the first AD or somebody that you trust, and just communicate, and just to let people be aware of what's going on, so people know there's nothing wrong. And if someone chooses to judge, it's really their own problem. I just think that in the end, we're all human. And if there really is a problem, I think people are grateful to know, because people naturally want to help out each other. I think, you know, that's that
Yeah,
kind of.
that's great. I mean, Andrea, I appreciate so much what you said, and it just dovetails well with what we were talking about, and just your own personal story. I mean, it takes courage, as you said, right? But sometimes the desperation moves us towards the courage to get the help that we need.
Definitely. And I put it out to people from the industry that if you want to contact me, whether it's, you know, Facebook or Instagram, or personally, my addresses are kind of public. I am happy to speak with people, and I just want to put it out there. And that's why I'm so glad that you reached out to me. I just, you know,
Yeah.
I think that we're all in this together. And if I can make a difference for other people, maybe just speaking up about it, maybe people will feel more encouraged. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman, or if you're a man, if you're older or younger, we're all human beings, and we all have bad days, down, up, you know. It's just like life is, it's never constant. And you know, and it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to talk about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
And so, you know, thank you to Richard and Andrea for sharing their stories. And I hope that helps fill out kind of this presentation that isn't meant just to be abstract, but is meant to be a real connection to all of you that are watching live and or the recording later, that to normalize and to destigmatize the fact that we're all human, and humans statistically will go through mental health challenges in their lifetime. And will be on that spectrum from being well to not being well on the mental health continuum. And so it's just monitoring ourselves and finding ways, and preferably along the way building access points and supports that we can access, especially when we're not doing well. We had a couple questions we can jump to just here in the end. There were just a couple questions. Let me just grab it here. Yeah, some of it was just about, you know, I'm not sure my manager or my peers are going to be accepting. I think Andrea addressed that some people may not be as accepting, but you'll find your way, and that there will be people who are able to hear what you have to say.
I think that, you know, if you come to someone from a really honest point, just like no pretense, and just if you look at someone and tell them that, hey, I'm having a really difficult time or having a hard day, this is what's going on, I just wanted to let you know, I don't think anyone's going to turn their back to you. Even if they're really busy in the moment, it does stay with them and they are aware of it. And nobody wants to have a responsibility for someone not, you know, telling them that they're not well and, you know, ignoring them. I just, and you know, and you can tell more people. I don't think you need to fear that. And especially in the last few years, and look at this year, what's been going on in the world, I think people are really, really careful, and people want to be aware of what's going on, and they will listen more now than, let's say, 2-3 years ago. So I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was just a question about people, because not everybody, of course, there's a lot of people on this session that may be from other segments within entertainment and may not have the union representation or the same health benefit plans. And so just that question again about resources for people who don't have access to paid counseling and EAP. And I was mentioning before that Actsafe and the Call Time Mental Health websites will have resources. There's also the Canadian Mental Health Association.
And there are also groups that you can join for example, for depression or PTSD. There are some groups available even through VGH, and they're free. You do have to sometimes register, and you know, and then there's a record of you attending these groups, but they are free and they are available. There are a lot of even sort of blogs and Facebook groups, for example. You can choose your own, and I really think like you can help yourself a lot by just grounding, meditating, and being like, you know, the kind of identifying the colors and breathing. Just there's a lot that goes along with that. Eating well, hydrating, and you know, instead of drinking too much coffee when you're feeling down or tired or when you're kind of coming down with stuff, it's like just hydrate and just eat properly, try to get some sleep, and sometimes going exercising, like when I'm too pumped up and I feel like I'm going to burst or I feel triggered. Sometimes when you feel triggered, for example, for addicts, if there are any addicts over here, it's a matter of a minute. You just need to change your mindset. And I felt triggered. I'm working on a film right now it's very triggering for me as well, and I'm a producer on it. And you just need to do something for about a minute. It takes less than that. And whether you take a book quickly or you call somebody that doesn't work with you, or you go for a quick jog or do like 10 burpees, it changes something in your brain, and you forget and you don't feel triggered anymore. It's that quick. So, you know, for example.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Shauna, maybe I'll have you kind of jump back in here too, just on that point, because I think it goes back to that it only takes a minute to do some of the self-soothing or breathing that you recommended.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think some of the examples Andrea is giving are around really grounding. So it really can be done even in just, you know, a minute, where you're really finding a way to kind of come back to yourself and find that calmness. And definitely one way that you can do that is by reaching out, picking up the phone, as a few people have mentioned as well. And I did want to emphasize that, you know, there are crisis lines. Even the name seems maybe more like imminent than you might be feeling. But if you Google the Vancouver Crisis Center, there's a phone number on there. They also have chat options. I've volunteered with them in the past, and It's really a space where you can stay totally anonymous and you can just speak to somebody 24/7, and you can just share whatever's going on with you. And they also might be able to provide more resources, or they can just listen and support you there. So there's, always somebody that you can talk to.
And for community resources as well, there's a BC 211. So you can dial 211, or you can Google BC 211, and that's another hub of resources, community resource, counseling, housing, other resources that are available in the Vancouver and BC region. And so that's another good point of access that will list some of those, and you can just tell them what kind of help you're looking for, and they can also look up their directory of resources and help point you in the right direction. As well, there was a question about how to get further training for either supervisors or managers to kind of recognize and help support people or peers. And there is nationally, the Canadian Mental Health Commission has a program called Mental Health First Aid. It's a 2-day training, and it's a good training, although it is 2 days. So there are some shorter trainings as well. One of the trainings was actually earlier this week. We did a session earlier in the Actsafe week here, and it was recorded and will be posted to the website that was more geared towards supervisors and managers and how to address mental health in the workplace and how to actually approach people that you're managing to provide the kind of support that we're also talking about today. And also there are some just written modules under the Learning Center on the calltimementalhealth.com website. And there's the first couple modules there. And then from these presentations this week, in the next week or so, we're going to be updating that website with a couple more modules that you can just access on your own time from there as well. And so hopefully that is some help. I know we're just coming up on the end of our time, so our moderator might want to probably just say a couple things. So again, Richard and Andrea, thank you so much for your personal input, sharing from your stories, and really helping normalize for everyone that we all struggle. Same with you, Christina, that you're a hardworking member of the sector, as well as somebody who's been representing people on the Call Time Mental Health campaign, and your passion for people's well-being. And so thank you for introducing Call Time Mental Health in this session. So much appreciated. And thank you, Shauna, too, for guiding us through your presentation and for the tips that you've given us.
And thank you, Greg, for continuing to be a great resource for Call Time Mental Health and many others.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
How wonderful was it? Thank you, Shauna and Christina and Greg, and to Call Time Mental Health and FSEAP for putting this session together. If you want to learn more about this subject, please visit our website on actsafe.ca, where you will access additional resources and links to all our AIP week presenters and websites as well. Additionally, please visit calltimementalhealth.com for great resources on mental health awareness in BC's motion picture industry. And as the time has been the end, we thank you to all for being with us. And one of the best ways of dealing with mental health awareness is by showing support for everyone working to make a difference. On behalf of all our presenters and the Actsafe Safety Association, I wanted to thank you for joining us today and support us in our annual Safety Week initiatives. Thank you all. Goodbye. Stay safe.